Garrett Wilson is an exceptional route runner, but on this play, he shouldn't be able to get open. The Minnesota Vikings defense is playing cover 2. There's 2 deep safeties and 2 cornerbacks sitting in outside zones. Wilson is at the top of the screen highlighted in green. He's going to be isolated against the cornerback at the top of the screen, but it's not a fair fight because Wilson is running an intermediate out route to the exact spot where the cornerback's leverage is. For Wilson to get open, he has to completely change the circumstances of this play. The first thing we have to note is the cornerback is starting in an off-man position shaded to the outside. We're going to draw a yellow line parallel to the sideline through Wilson and a red line through the cornerback. As you can see, the cornerback is significantly wider than Wilson is in a starting position. That's the first thing Wilson has to change. He runs his release perfectly so that by the time he's half the distance to the defender, they are almost in line with each other. This is very important because it opens up routes for Wilson to threaten the cornerback with. Instead of the defender sitting outside and only having to usher the receiver inside when he gets upfield, he now has to square him up and respect the different directions Wilson can come out of his break-in. It's now a fair fight. And Wilson wins a fair fight every single time. He smoothly transitions from threatening inside with a decisive step before breaking to the outside. The cornerback is now trailing Wilson, and he's desperately accelerating because he fears he's giving up the touchdown deep downfield. Wilson is in control once he's on top of the defender, but he's not going for the end zone. He still has to run his route. So he breaks outside and makes a good catch before going out of bounds. Wilson collapses his body purposely to stop his momentum from carrying his feet over the sideline. He executed so many specific movements at high speed with great precision just to pry open a tiny window for his quarterback to hit. His quarterback obliges as well. The Buffalo Bills defense plays cover 1 here with a single high safety and 5 defenders rushing the quarterback. Wilson is isolated on the wide side of the field against Teron Johnson. Johnson is a good cornerback and he's going to press Wilson aggressively at the line of scrimmage. Wilson's quick feet put Johnson in more of a passive position. He doesn't attempt to jam the receiver as soon as the ball is snapped, but he's in his vicinity. Young wide receivers have to learn a lot in the NFL. They can't just be better athletes than everyone else like they are in college. More often than not, the toughest thing for them to pick up is how to use their hands to run better routes. Wilson doesn't wait for the cornerback to engage him here. He starts the upper body contact so he puts himself in control of the defender instead of the other way around. Critically, when the receivers separate, Wilson is the last person to touch the other in this scenario. This prevents the defender from squeezing him off his vertical line upfield. He re-engages the defender at the top of his drop to create separation when he turns back towards the quarterback. Johnson is yards away from Wilson when he catches the ball uncovered underneath. This is a perfectly run curl route against press coverage. Switching to the other Bills game, here we see a completely different route against a completely different coverage and a completely different defender. Wilson has a tight split but begins his route going towards the sideline. He isolates with Tre'Davious White and swipes his arm down to knock the defenders away as he looks to turn the corner. This convinces White that he's running an out and up, so the cornerback turns his eyes back to the quarterback inside while gaining depth upfield. But Wilson is actually going to break to the sideline so he's wide open. He understood that he could sell the upfield turn and keep White off his upper body with that movement to get White open. He cuts to the outside as soon as he's in White's blind spot so the defender can't react and recover his positioning. The Vikings play a different variation of cover 1 on this play. Instead of blitzing a 5th defender, they send 4 and use a robber in the middle of the field. Wilson is a tight alignment to the top of the screen. This is the release he wants to run, but the defender immediately in front of him is going to drift wide to block that. All of the defenders are playing man coverage here, but they're also overplaying outside leverage because they have 2 defenders in zones in the middle of the field. They're trying to force the receivers inside where they have a defender waiting to rob and bait the quarterback into an interception. Wilson is forced to slalom around the outside of that initial defender. Then as he comes out of that slalom, he transitions immediately to a hard plant with his outside foot to sell the outbreaking route to the next defender. The defender who's actually covering him bites on that fake. Wilson is in control again now. He accelerates so that defender is on his outside hip and trailing him. The perfect position for Wilson to cut back against the grain sharply and come open on his corner route. The defender is then forced to pull him back and give up the pass interference penalty instead of giving up the touchdown. Wilson understands coverages so well that he actually signaled that he was going to come open to his quarterback very early in this route. There aren't many receivers in the league who are tougher to stop at the line of scrimmage than Wilson. You shouldn't try to jam him. He'll make you pay for it. You definitely shouldn't try to jam him in the slot where he has a 2-way goal. On this play, the defender attempts to engage Wilson before he releases into his route. What makes Wilson so difficult to disrupt is the suddenness of his movements. He shakes the defender to his right side in the same motion as he releases into his route on his left side. Wilson's upper body does one thing while his lower body does the opposite to set him up into his route. Once he is free into his route, the only thing that slows him down is the quarterback's pass that arrives behind him, forcing him to adjust and make a nice play on the ball before taking the hit from the deeper defender. In the NFL, one team is always dictating to the other. When you have an elite pass rush, for example, the defense dictates to the offense because the offense has to consider the pass rush in every decision they make. Do they have to run plays where you keep extra blockers in protection, or call plays so that the ball comes out quicker than you want it to avoid the pass rush? You can dictate in different ways on offense and on defense. When you have a number one receiver, you can attack that specific matchup and check in and out of plays based on how much the defense tips its coverage towards your number one option. This play is a great example of that. The Jets have their quarterback in shotgun, but it's a tight formation that is made even tighter when the slot receiver to the right side motions in behind the line of scrimmage at the snap. The Browns react by keeping 10 defenders in the box to stop the run while leaving Wilson in a one-on-one outside. If you can trust your cornerback to hold up in coverage here, the defense is in a great position. But since the Jets know that Wilson will win in his release off the line of scrimmage, they know where the ball is going before it's even snapped. It's a matchup advantage for the offense, so they can dictate to the defense. Wilson uses a stutter step to slightly shift his position inside. He just wants the cornerback to put his weight on his inside foot. As soon as that happens, Wilson has gone in the opposite direction. Even with the quarterback not throwing him a great ball here, it's a little bit high, slow, and to the inside, Wilson still has a relatively huge amount of separation when he turns around to reach up for the ball. To get this much separation on a goal line route typically requires a lot of work or a great receiver. In this instance, it was a great receiver doing quite a bit of work. To get an idea of the kind of quickness that Wilson has, here he is running a slant route against one of the league's best corners, Tre'Davious White. White didn't have a great season, but he's still a very talented player. He doesn't do anything notable here in terms of route running. He's just too fast through his break for White to stick with him. One of the refreshing aspects of watching Wilson is he knows when to be creative in his routes and he knows when to just put his foot in the ground and go. On this play against the Cleveland Browns, the defense is going to play Tampa 2, which will isolate Wilson against a safety in space with a two-way go. For a number one receiver in the NFL to get a run-up against a safety with two options on either side, that's easy pickings. You may as well be uncovered in that situation. Wilson doesn't mess around and gets wide open for the big play. He's a bigger receiver, so he's not a burner in a straight line, but he's quick enough to create big plays while running precise routes and exhibiting elite body control. When he's put in a position where he has to use his size or strength, he inevitably comes out on top. For this red zone play against the Chicago Bears, the defense will commit two defenders to Wilson. Whether intentionally or just by the way the play developed, the safety and cornerback to his side will bracket him. Wilson releases inside and Mike White looks his way. The cornerback immediately jumps forward and latches onto Wilson's outside shoulder. He can be this aggressive because he's ushering Wilson to the safety in the middle of the field. The defender is too aggressive and grabs Wilson's back. He's flagged for pass interference, but that doesn't stop the play. Wilson could have just fallen down and taken his penalty yardage here, but he instead fights through the contact and comes wide open in the end zone for the touchdown. Wilson is the interior slot on this play. He releases vertically at a slight angle towards the defender. That allows the defender to get a strong hand onto his shoulder, but Wilson is so strong he just goes through it and the defender actually ends up stumbling rather than slowing Wilson down like he intended. He then takes a heavy hit from another defender at the end of the play, but maintains control of the ball to the ground. Absorbing big hits isn't an issue for Wilson. He confidently runs routes through the middle of the field and maintains control of the ball through contact. In fact, more often than not, it's those who hit him who wind up on the floor rather than him. Wilson has rare balance, but because his skill set is so well rounded, both in terms of his technical ability and his physical profile, he's able to contribute to the offense in every role. He's a possession receiver, a big play threat, and a mismatch option all in one, which is the definition of a number one receiver. The Jets don't have a quarterback right now, so it's hard to be overly optimistic about their immediate future, but this is the best roster they've had for a very long time. And importantly, the foundation of the team is now built on a group of young players who are likely to get better, but who are also on affordable contracts for years to come. That sets them up to build a contender of a team. Sauce Gardner is celebrated as a savage at cornerback, and while Garrett Wilson is a little bit more overlooked, he's just as much a savage at wide receiver as well. If you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to like it and subscribe to my channel. It allows me to make more videos in the future because the NFL demonetizes all of these videos on copyright grounds. Thank you.